Hi, Sarah from Foran Equine here. When the seasons transition from winter into spring, so too does your horse's coat. Supporting this transition with key supplementation is a must. Supplementing with Kentucky Carron Oil, an emulsified flaxseed oil that is rich in omega-3 fatty acids, will help to support supple skin, reduce flakiness and dander, and add moisture to the skin, which may also help with hair removal when grooming. Using Copper Max Paste, a handy oral syringe containing chelated, bioavailable sources of copper and zinc, will help to avoid a rusty, yellow, or brassy coat colour. Using a combination of Kentucky Carron Oil and Copper Max Paste will help to ensure that your horse has healthy skin and a gleaming coat for the months ahead.
So the beauty of the grassroots level is there is so many different types of horses, ages of horses competing. You have the seasoned professionals that go out there and know what they're doing. You have those horses that are absolutely in their prime, in their early teenage years. But we also have our young guns, our young horses who are coming up through the levels, who are just finding their feet in eventing. And there's actually a lot of horses at the grassroots level who are in this age category. So I thought I'd do a whole show on how to best produce your horse up at the grassroots levels. So who better to have on this Foran Equine grassroots show than Red Mills and Foran Equine rider Sam Watson, because you've produced plenty of young horses yourself, Sam. How do you even know when your young horse is ready to go out and compete?
I'm quite guilty of doing a little bit more training in public, being a little bit less prepared going out with them. But I still would do, I still think the education that I would want to give them at an event, it has to be a positive experience. So even though there'll be greenness and there'll be more wobbling going on that I might want, and I would criticize myself at times and say, Sam, like, you should have done an extra cross-country school before you did that, because then it's just a better experience. It is all about the quality of the experience. I'll start by saying this, in the dressage arena, it's much less about what we do and it's about how we do it. That's what impacts our score. So what we do is we've got to go up, enter enter a turn right at C, do a 20-meter circle. They're all the watts, but what's getting you the marks, okay, the odd time we forget what we're doing and the judge blows the horn, we've got to start again. But it's about how you do it, is how you get your scores. In cross country, it's not. It's just what you do. Like, as long as you go between the flags and you jump the fences and you come home. And even like culturally in the sport, a lot of people will talk about, like, going, oh, there's no marks for style, and they're right. There aren't any marks for style. But actually, you can, if it's been uncomfortable and a little bit confusing and a little bit awkward and a little bit kind of scary and unnerving for the horse, that is not a positive experience, and that could come back and bite you later in the day. So you got to be thinking about how you do it as a starting point, and it's all about a positive experience. So then we can explore what's going to contribute to achieving a positive experience. But that's what you're looking for.
It's nice to hear somebody of your caliber think, right, we're going to go out and compete with our young horses. Like you say, maybe you may think, oh, I should have done a little bit more training, because I think we can be guilty of staying at home, training, and never actually taking the plunge and going for it. Because it can be daunting entering that first event, because you think, okay, we're ready, and you could get there and it just slowly not unfold in the way that you'd hoped. So it's nice to hear you just say, go for it.
The theory is always that you got to have a like, the philosophy in our yard is you don't practice until you get it right. You practice until you don't get it wrong. Now, if you take that too literally and you take it too far, as you say, you never go anywhere. And so you got, that this is, I think Einstein said, in theory and in practice, in theory, they should be the same thing, but in practice, they're not the same thing. And look, that's life. That's what we're always balancing. So it's about, like, there's no black and white here. There's no like set number of days, and each horse is different. So and like, this is going to be the key part of this show and this conversation, is we're going to talk about the different horse types. There are some horses who will go better when, like, you'll take them cross country schooling when no one else is about, or you'll be doing exercises at home when no one's at home. and they'll just be a bit dead, and they just won't be that kind of really thinking about what they're doing, and it'll all feel a little bit labored maybe, and you'll be like, oh, this isn't as much fun. I'm kind of having to kick them around. You'll take them to a competition with 200 horses galloping around the place doing all sorts of stuff, and they'll come alive underneath you in a really positive way. And it's like, oh God, this is brilliant. It's actually a positive experience. But there'll be horses that we got to cover horses that worry. So I've got one of those, and they're, you know, even just the experience of traveling to the competition, stuff like that. Now those horses, if they are worrying the minute they leave home, they definitely need to go schooling enough times before going to a big competition, because the competition is going to escalate. It's going to 5x that amount of worry and anxiousness. So, you know, it'd be like taking your kids swimming. You know, you got to go and you got to be in the quiet pool first, which is like the schooling, where there aren't loads of other kids splashing about and people jumping in, and it, because you'll terrify them. Like that's what'll happen. And then you're scarring them for life. Then you're going to have to undo that amount of terror. So you got to read your horse. They're all different. So that's the first thing, actually, is just assessing the personality of your horse. And that'll kind of dictate your plan for you. So the quiet ones and the laid back ones are going to be out competing a bit quicker than the anxious and nervous ones.
I suppose, does the personality of the horse also affect like what level to start at? Because we hear people say, oh, you know, compete a level below that you train, but where do you start with a young horse first coming out, picking a level?
Yeah, you got to have I always say better to wish you had than wish you hadn't. So when you're thinking about entering a class, it's better to go do a 90 and wish you had done the 100, because the 90 went so well and you're going, oh, I could have done the 100, I wasted a trip. Then entering the 100, it going disastrously and going, oh, I wish I hadn't entered that. I wish I'd done the 90. So always to better, because you've what's the harm? What damage have you, like the worst thing you've done is spent a little bit more on fuel and had an extra day, but actually you haven't wasted it. Like it's more preparation. It's more, you can't do any damage by under pitching the level you go at. And again, back to how we do it rather than what we do. Loads of people will interpret a double clear in their first competition and maybe a rosette in their first competition. And certainly with cross country, a clear or a clear inside the time. They'll interpret that as perfection, because a 0 in the cross country jumping is the perfect score, but it probably wasn't the perfect round. I mean, I can't think of many times I've had a perfect round. I nearly did at Tryon in 2018, and then I really messed up the last combination at the top of the hill, and Arda Highlight dug deep and got me out of it. And definitely with the young horses, I've had so many clear rounds, but loads to work on. And actually, you know, it's, you know, when you're at an event, you're always parked. You get an opportunity to be parked kind of close enough to someone. Like I remember going to my first couple of events, and I get so excited if like William Fox Pitt was the lorry in front of me driving in. I'd be, oh, I'm going to be parked beside William. And then you're just a fly on the wall all day. Yeah, okay, I'm eavesdropping. I'll put my hand up. I admit it. You know, you're not doing it on purpose. I'm not lurking, eavesdropping. But you got to see how they react and stuff like that. And I always remember those riders asking how they went, and the professional riders were always far more critical, going, yeah, he was a good boy, but sticky at fence 8, and, you know, had a good look at the water and whatever. Like they were clear, but they sounded like a dressage judge kind of. Yes. They were being kind of looking for where they needed to improve. Whereas, you know, you could see like a kind of, you'd be walking the course maybe, and there'd be competitors on course, and there could be someone, and like, we got to have fun, but you'd be like going, oh my God, there were a lot of moments, and they come through the finish like pure elation. Oh my God, it's absolutely brilliant, we did it. And you're going like, yeah, but
just a big thumbs up to the mum, like, yeah, we crossed the finish line.
So we got a balance. Like, I don't get me wrong, like it is fun. Yeah, I mean, you got to get the balance right. Like Andrew Nicholson, he was interesting because he would bring his 5-year-olds out, and he'd do what was novice. It was still novice with you guys. It's 110 with us now, as we've changed our scoring system. But that's a big old ask. And he'd fall. You see Andrew fall off every spring. He'd be falling off his 5-year-olds left, right, and center, and having problems. But it was calm, and he probably, you know, himself, he always used to say that was the best preparation for badminton. For him, he had to be so sharp to get a 5-year-old around a novice. He had to be so sharp. But you got to remember that these professional riders give their horses so much confidence in everything else they do. Their natural softness, the security with the leg, the preparation of the lines, how they line up fences and give them time to look, how they reassure them with the leg at the right time, how they stay soft with their body, soft with their hands, so it's a really pleasant, the horse can use themselves and jump. So he's giving the horse so much confidence, all the other days of the week and the months of the year, that when he goes and he uses the competition to sort of just push the comfort zone a little bit and see how they react and see how they learn. But you got to remember his purpose as well. He's producing horses to cope with a tough badminton and a tough Burley later on in their career, to go to an Olympic Games, to fly halfway across the world, go to an Olympic Games and be able to deliver when suddenly there's 100,000 people watching. So he's kind of looking for these little opportunities to push, he's kind of training the comfort zone more than just training red flag on the right, white flag on the left. I think if you're a grassroots rider or you're a commercial rider, you're someone producing a horse commercially to sell, you are trying to produce a horse to be so comfortable, confident, adjustable, relaxed, understanding the course and stuff like that. So those goals. So don't always try and copy Andrew Nicholson. That's a strategy that could get us all into trouble.
There could be a few more of us on the floor if we do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Talking of planning, what is the importance of looking at short and long-term goals with your young horse? Because you can see people, let's say, planning for age championships and things like that at the end of the year, but that might not be the right strategy for your horse if you're thinking long-term. How important is it to try and get that balance right?
The more you're doing it, the more you can judge. You'll get better at reading and reading a horse, but you're always reading the horse. So I know with my 5-year-olds, which ones could be Le Lion Danger 6-year-olds and which ones probably wouldn't be Le Lion Danger 6-year-olds, but they would be Le Lion Danger 7-year-olds.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, if you're saying, I don't think they'll handle Le Lion at 7, then I say, no, you got to prepare him. You've got 2 years from when they're 5 to get that horse comfortable enough, strong enough, mentally secure enough. Because remember, they've got to cope with the travel, they've got to cope with everything else as well. So you've got to build up that toughness, because if you can't do that at 7, you're going to struggle to be doing badminton and things like that at 9 and 10. But you're reading the person, but you do just have to change plans sometimes. Like the of my 2 6-year-olds, they've kind of switched a little bit. Like the one that I would have said, he's definitely a 6-year-old for Lilian, because I know how competitive he can be. And I was thinking more like producing a really good dressage score and finishing on it. And then the other one, I was thinking he's going to be more effective as a 7-year-old because he's more of a galloping type and more of a jumper. But actually, as their personalities develop through their 5-year-old season, the one that I thought would take longer has just been so professional and so grown up, and he really would be starting out his 6-year-old campaign. I can see that actually mentally he's going to be ready for it. So now I just have to prepare. I'll be thinking about I'll see how he goes at it. Like the first international, I think, is always a home international, much easier on them. I was thinking about Kronenberg this year in Holland with the older horses, and then you're thinking, well, if I'm going with the truck, will I bring the young horses? And then you're thinking, no, taking a 6-year-old to Europe for his first ever trip, like that's too far. So start off with the home international, get him away from home for 4 or 5 days, which they kind of do with some of the jumping shows anyway. Like I did that with them in the winter, getting them away from home for 4 or 5 days. Like that's the first, that's a big part of the equation. That's what happens when you go to Lilian Danger, you go to a championship. It's getting them away from home. So you can practice these things. Like that was just show jumping. There wasn't even an event. There was no dressage test, no cross country, but you're practicing the components. So it's the same with your young horse championship and stuff like that. You got to, if you know that crowds and atmosphere are going to be a big part of that, try and be smart. Sometimes it'll be the shows, like over here we call it, like the agricultural shows and fairs and stuff like that. They'll have the best atmospheres. And you might even be entering, there's normally a show jumping class there that you can do. Like thinking completely outside the box, you might end up doing a work and hunter or something like that. If it's a really good atmosphere and there's a lot of people there, because if you're aiming for badminton grassroots, that's going to be a big factor. So you're trying to get that in. So it's like anything, like it's conditioning. Like I always say that the key to any kind of performance in anything is no surprises. So if there's a big surprise and a big jump, whether that is physical, whether that's to do with the fitness, whether it's to do with the height of the fences, or whether it's to just do with the occasion and the atmosphere, if that is a big surprise and a big shot and something very, very different to what that horse has experienced, you're opening the door to things unraveling.
That preparation just even more important with these young horses. And when we ride these young horses, we know decision making has to be really fast. You know, they're sharp enough as it is. You've got to be quick mentally to make decisions. But what about decisions when you're walking your cross country and you see a combination and it's got a long route? What would you say is best for these young horses? Do you go for the direct route to try and educate them? Do you play it safe? Do you go for the long route? What is best for the education of these young horses when you're faced with the likes of long routes that are technically easier and these direct routes that are a little bit more challenging?
You've always got, when I'm walking a course, I'm visualizing how it's going to feel to ride. Okay. So like the hardest, like particularly at grassroots, like at the lower levels, normally the fences themselves are pretty fair, but it can be the line into them. And it can actually be, it can be the fact that you just had the longest gallop and stretch and it was a little bit downhill and it was 4 minutes into the course. And the young horse will have just like, they'll have jumped loads of fences. They'll be getting confident. They'll have a big gallop and stretch in front of them. It's a little bit downhill. They could get a little bit, they could be getting away from you a little bit, getting a little bit on the forehand, getting a little bit heavy in the hand. And now the course designer has actually given you a fence with a bit of undulation and quite a sharp turn into it. And then you're going, okay, this is actually the preparation for this fence is going to be the thing here. Like, I know this horse can jump this fence. Like if I was cross-country schooling, I'd probably jump something almost identical to it. So the fence is fine. But this is gonna feel a bit like I'm gonna have to be working on that. As I'm cantering down the hill, I've got to think about keeping the horse fresh and light. I'm gonna take a wider turn in here so that because I actually don't know. It's a young horse. I don't know how he's gonna feel 4 minutes into a course at this point, because in my cross country schooling, I'm always breaking it up a little bit. I'm not going probably at full pace for that duration of time. So that's gonna feel a little bit different. So I think, right, I'm gonna give myself more time. Now, sometimes the long routes, they might be an easier fence, but they might actually be a much more awkward and unflowing route to get to it. And that can sometimes be worse on a young horse, trying to twist him and turn him, take him past a fence and do whatever. So, and then sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes actually the direct route, the course designer knows exactly what they're doing. And the direct route is quite tight off the turn. It's been quite a long gallop to it. And you're thinking, well, there's a longer route and it's a wider line and it's an easier approach. And you just, why not? Like, first event, what am I trying to, this isn't the end goal. I'm just trying to get a good feeling. And again, better to wish you had than wish you hadn't. So going, look, the long route was easy. And that's just the balance that you're trying to get right. Is this horse ready? Are you ready to learn more? And like, if confidence is high, Ginny Elliott taught me this. She said, you imagine you got a fuel gauge on your horse. Most of us have driven a car. You got a fuel gauge and it goes up and down. Your fuel gauge on a horse is not, you've got a couple of them, like, of course there's energy, but it's confidence. The confidence gauge is key. So if you might change your plan. If you actually had, like, there was a couple of easy fences there at fences 14 and 15, and I thought they were easy bankers, but actually horse wasn't concentrating and I wasn't concentrating. We made a bit of a meal of them. And then fence 16, we had planned to go straight, but you know what? Like, I'm actually just after putting a huge dent in my confidence fuel gauge. I'm just gonna get the confidence back. I don't need to throw the biggest question on the course at them following that. So you got to read the confidence fuel gauge a little bit. And when the confidence is high and it's going well, then you got to push the comfort zone. Then that's the time to learn a little bit, particularly if there's a bigger goal in mind. We're all going to have different goals. And I think you're trying to learn about your horse. You're trying to see, like, how's this horse is on a pathway to Le Lion d'Angers, a young horse world championships, or even, next stop is the badminton grassroots championships. And I know it's going to be harder. Like, there comes a point when you're going, okay, I'm not going to I've got to stop being too much in the comfort zone. The feeling is nice. The experience is nice. Everything's going well. Now I've got to test that we can go outside the comfort zone a little bit and still do that with the heart rate staying low and relaxed, with the preparation being good, with the smoothness being there. You got to remember, there are, I don't know if I've said this on a grassroots show, you only have 4 responsibilities as a rider. You got the straightness, which is the line. You've got the speed, not too fast, not too slow. So sometimes horses are slowing down coming into fences, and you've got to keep them in front of your leg and say, hey, keep taking me to the fence. Sometimes horses are getting too fast, and you've got to be able to adjust that speed, but with your third responsibility, which is softness. So we've got the straightness, not too wobbly. We've got the speed, not too fast, not too slow. We've got softness of the hands and softness of the seat. Those are the 2 points, because the horse has to be able to use his back, and the horse has to be able to use their body as well. And if we're too strong with the hand or too heavy with the seat, it's very hard for the horse to do their job and adjust themselves and do everything. Like, that's why horses loose jump so well, and then sometimes we get on them and we ruin the whole thing. And your fourth responsibility is staying on. You know, those are what you're looking for. Going, okay, am I doing my 4 responsibilities well? Could I be, okay, straightness is really good, speed is really good. Oh, maybe I could be a little softer. You know, maybe I am hanging on a little bit too much, and horses aren't able to use themselves quite so much. That doesn't mean we ride with loose reins. It's softness, not emptiness in the contact. I like to have a connection. And then, you know, with regards to staying on, that's just your upper, you know, your position, you know, keeping your shoulders back and stuff like that. So it is that simple. And it's just about doing those 4 simple things really, really well. The stride is not our responsibility, particularly cross country. If you have the speed right, and if there's enough softness, you are training your, and this is so relevant to the young horse conversation, Rosie, is when I'm going around on the young horses, particularly to the single fences in the middle of the field, because I've been riding for thousands of hours, my eye has developed. So I will pick them up. I'm not in control of that, by the way. That happens to me. Seeing a stride is something that happens to you. You're not in control of it. You're in control of the 4 responsibilities I just told you: the straight, the speed, the softness, and staying on. You're not in control of seeing a stride, so don't try and control it. But it happens to you, and you got to be. I've become very aware of not using that too much to help the younger horses, like particularly on the easier fences, because I need them to learn. Because coming out of the, you know, when you walk a Badminton or a Burley, there are certain fences that there's, you know, the undulation, the lake, the features, the crowds, everything that's going on. You don't know if that horse is going to, you know, shuffle in an extra stride or not. You don't know the pattern. Like, particularly in Eric Winter, he loves to design with stride patterns that we cannot predict. And so you have to train your horses to be able to adapt with that. And it is their responsibility. The real thing about cross country is, even if you see what you think is the best distance, your horse might not be comfortable with that. Again, the undulations play a part. The fact that they can't see through the fences sometimes like they can on a show jumping course. You don't know what's going through their head. So what you think is the perfect stride pattern might not be the stride pattern that they want to be on. So again, just control, be on the right pace, be on the right line, be in the right position, and let your horse do the jump. And that's the softness. And then you guys get to know each other. That's what you're training.
It's that, you know, thinking on your feet. Both you've got to think on your feet, and you've got to allow the horse to learn to do that as well, and learn to adapt as you go. And sticking with decision making, I know in England we've had some very wet weather recently. Last year was very wet. I'm sure it's the case for many people. How important is it to run your young horse on different ground conditions, in the wet, in the dry? How important is that for their long-term development as an event horse?
So, like, I always say, soft ground is safe ground. Like, I love it. I have a sand gallop with absolutely no fiber in it, no nothing. There's 14 inches of sand, and that's it. And that's my summer, because it is so. And then I've got a grass gallop, which I'm using now in the preparation for badminton, because they've got to feel, they've got to work. So they've got to be able to work and cope with the tough conditions mentally, and then be able to jump out of it. Like, that's got to be normal. Again, like, you know, you even see things like horses who've been turned out during the winter and live out, fields get trashed. It's tough, but they recover very quickly in the spring. They'll recover in about 2 weeks. But they're used to it. They're used to mud. And so therefore it's not a big, like, suddenly they're not going, how do I work this out? How do I do it? But then even working them and having and being able to cope. So again, depending on what your goal is, like, if you're very committed to being a fair weather rider, and you are always going to be a fair weather rider. And I know people I sometimes feel this myself, like, it's absolutely peeing it down with rain. You know, do I really want to go and ride 4 horses today at a show? And like, the older I get, the more that becomes tough. But like, Sparks is I couldn't let Sparks down. She's done all the work. So I'm like, okay, come on, let's go. You know, then you can kind of say, if that's your goal, being like, look, I'm never going to compete in the wet. I don't need to train in the wet. Like, it's horrible conditions out there. And if you don't want to do it and all the rest, that, like, you're all kind of opening the door for failure. Now, if you want to be competitive, like, again, if you're aiming for things like a Badminton Grassroots or like a Lilion or something like that, they could be wet. So you've got to take that opportunity. I prefer it. Like cross country is more impactful in soft ground. So again, if you've got good cross country horses, they can be more competitive when the ground is soft. There's going to be more time penalty, so you can use their strengths a little bit more on the leaderboard, and it's safer in terms of injuries. The opposite then, like with the firm ground, I would always take the pace off a little bit, but the value of working on faster, the value of competing on faster ground and not ignoring it and not staying away from it is the horse has to learn how to balance and carry themselves when the ground is very firm. Because again, if you're aiming for the Badminton Grassroots or the Lyon and it turns out to be very fast ground and very hard ground, and now, well, we have to run on it because that's the goal. The horse needs to know what firm ground feels like so that they can be in the right balance. If they've never run on it and they're training all the time on like perfect gallops with nice softness to them, and they've been doing all their preparation on soft ground, a soft ground action is different to a firm ground action, and they need to know how to carry themselves on firm ground. Otherwise, they're just more likely to get injured. That doesn't mean take every opportunity you can to run on firm ground, because for sure load and exposure to hard conditions, it is cumulative, so you will do more damage, but just by, like I say, no surprises. So you can't go on like perfect ground to soft ground all the time, and then the one championship you go to or the one big target you go to, you're going to run at 100% on firm ground for the first time ever, because the horse just isn't gonna, like, you're just opening the door to injury.
It's allowing them to be educated along the way, but also preserving your young horse and having them for the future. And we've talked a little bit about expectations, but how do you manage expectations with a young horse? Because there's a hard balance between ambition and obviously the realistic capabilities of your young horse. That expectation balance can be quite difficult.
Yeah, I don't know how you can teach this, right? I just think that the more we talk about things, right, the easier, I think that, the easier it is to do it. So like I listen to podcasts where people talking about eating too much sugar and stuff like that. So you start to get conscious of it. So I hope this helps, because this is genuine, right? The outcome, like, do not let yourself judge your horse, and do not, others might judge your horse, but who cares about what other people think? Don't you feel like you're going to judge your horse based on the outcomes they achieve, like in terms of, well, did they win Badminton Grassroots or not? Like, because that was the goal. That's why I bought this horse, was to win such and such. That was the goal. And if they achieve the goal, brilliant, I love them. If they don't achieve the goal, well, that was a waste of money, wasn't it? And that was a waste of time. That is just not life. That's just a wrong attitude. Like the best thing about riding horses, like I say, I'm not an athlete. They're the athlete. I am their coach. And it's that journey. Like I think, like, I watch my boys playing soccer now underage, and the coaches are incredible. They're such nice people. And you can see the kind of buzz they get out of seeing those young athletes maturing and evolving, and how they react to different situations, and how they used to be really disappointed when things went badly, and now they're better at it. They used to get really anxious and nervous before a match, and now they're more confident. And it's the same thing for us. Like it is journey stuff. It's enjoy the journey with them, and be present, and read the horse, and be like, is this horse growing? Like, I always think that the key to life is growth. Like, I think that's what we're looking for, mental and physical growth. And I think if you can see, like, the buzzes that I get from the sport, sometimes they happen at home. Quite often they happen away from home, because those are bigger experiences. And the horses kind of surprise you in how well they cope with challenges, or they transform. They've really progressed in how they've dealt with things, and then the outcomes look after themselves. If you manage that process, and you enjoy the journey, you'll find yourself standing on podiums and doing things like that. You'll find yourself traveling overseas, or you'll find people knocking on your door with a big checkbook wanting to give you large sums of money so you can go and build the indoor school, or build the next stable barn, or whatever you need to do, or put your kids through school. Whereas if that's your goal, is I want to buy this horse for 25 grand, I want to sell it for 100 grand in 2 years time, and that's the goal, and that's what's going to dictate success or failure, you're probably going to do a bad job out of it. You've got to put the athlete first. You've got to put the experience first for both you and the horse, because ultimately that's what it's all about. And I can tell you now, standing on any podium, which I have not done at all that often in my life. I've done it a few different times. You still drive out of there like anybody else, driving home. You still have the same traffic jams, the same red lights. You get home, you've still got the same stables to muck out, and you still got to get up and do the washing up the next morning or do it that evening, whatever. Life is the exact same. So don't think that's going to change, because if you think that one day, the day you can finally stand on a podium, everything's going to change, it isn't. We're all the same, folks. We're all the exact same.
Oh, Sam, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your advice on producing these young horses up through the grassroots level.
No, it's an absolute pleasure, and it's great fun. And I kind of, I'm at that stage in my career where I start wondering how many more championships I'll be doing, or how many more badmintons and stuff I'll be doing. But what I know, I couldn't give up the young horses. It's not just because you want to be involved with horses, and going around 100 is far more sensible than going around a 5-star, and takes a little bit less time commitment. It's actually that the progress, the journey is so much more obvious. You get so many buzzes along the way, producing horses and retraining the horses. So it's the same thing. Like we've talked about the young horses, but it's the same with the retraining of the race horses and things like that. They can come with baggage and anxiety and all of the same kind of thing, because it's been a different experience, and sometimes a bit of a traumatic experience because they were doing something that they weren't naturally good at. Hence, they're now being retrained to do something else. So reading them and treating them like a person, same way if you were coaching a 10-year-old kid in sport, it's so rewarding and it's so enjoyable. So yes, enjoy, everybody. Enjoy the experience.
Enjoy the process. Thank you so much as well to Foran Equine for their continued support of the Grassroots Show. We've absolutely loved having them on board so far this year. Listeners, thank you as well for tuning in. And like Sam says, enjoy the journey. I hope you've picked up a few tips there and can go out and showcase these brilliant young horses this year at the grassroots level.
I'm going to add one last thing, Rosie.
Go for it.
If people want to, so I'm entered for badminton this year, hopefully going to be there. I'm thinking on one of the days that I'm not doing dressage, so it'll be the Thursday or Friday, could do a course walk for, podcast listeners and stuff like that. I mean, we'll do it for anyone, but if people are interested and people want that, there's no point putting that on if there's no demand. So if people would like a podcast, please comment below, and then we can check that out. And then if we've got enough interest, we'll do something for sure.
That would be absolutely amazing. There you go, listeners. If you want a course walk with Sam Watson, let us know, because we can make these things happen and they're not to be missed. So get in touch if that's something you're interested in. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back soon with more.